If the United States were to embrace Bitcoin, it could ensure the survival of the US dollar as global reserve currency, not global reserve asset, but global reserve currency. US Treasury bonds as global reserve asset, I think they're on their way out. It's 100% certain that fiat will debase. You need protection against that. The best protection, in my opinion, is Bitcoin.
Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Talk Crypto. Considering Bitcoin has held up pretty well in face of the FTX collapse last year, many investors are confident that the bottom is in, especially after its latest 35% move to the upside. But when we look at potential black swan events left in the market, we still have exchanges that could go belly up on us, like the issue brewing with DCG that owes creditors over $3 billion. In this interview, bond market expert Greg Foss dismisses the FUD around such events, arguing that the market has already priced it in, and that the current GBTC discount could represent a great opportunity for institutional investors that want exposure to Bitcoin. He also shares his thoughts on the role of Bitcoin as an insurance on the decaying fiat system, and how to properly allocate it in your portfolio, so pay close attention. Let's listen to Greg Foss as he goes over the changes in the digital asset space, potential events that could still impact crypto, and how regulation could benefit the market. But before we do, please consider subscribing to our channel, as we bring you daily content on the latest crypto news. And now, let's jump right into the video.
DCG owns 67 million shares of a trust, GBTC, that trades 4 million shares a day. Whoa. So that's an awful lot of supply. Now, you could argue, are they going to be a forced seller? Or what's another scenario that could happen? They could sell their trust to another fund manager.
Right.
Fidelity would be phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. But in doing that, they give up all the fees that is very profitable. You know, having spent my life in it as a trader, I do know one thing. When everybody's anticipating something horrible to happen, it's generally, a lot of it's already priced in. And, you know, this thing with DCG, if I'm not mistaken, you said they owe $3 billion, right?
Yep.
$3 billion is nothing.
Nothing.
Like, it used to be a lot of money. $3 billion is not a lot of money anymore, okay? And we have to put it in the context of, firstly, a Bitcoin market cap that's over 350 billion, so 100 times the size. We have to put it in the context of 3 billion in the context of, you know, trillion-dollar banks, okay? Like trillion-dollar asset lending banks. The recent increase in the price of Bitcoin could largely be due to short covering, whether it's people that were short the Bitcoin mining industry as a correlation, and therefore had a Bitcoin position that might be needed to cover as well. All of this is news that's in the market already, Paul. This is not a surprise. This is why potentially the market is adjusting to these this information over time. And I will say this, one of the biggest trades that people have to have on is they are long GBTC and short BITO or Bitcoin futures against it, and playing the potential arbitrage or compression, compression. In the context, though, of a global market, $10 billion, the valuation of GBTC, again, is a rounding error. It's not that much. If I was the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board and I knew I needed to get 1% of my assets into Bitcoin, I needed to own $10 billion of Bitcoin. That's 1%.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, wouldn't it be great to buy it at a 45% discount if you could do it all without any friction and then unwind the trust yourself? I'd be interested in that. I don't have $10 billion, but I do know there are some fund managers out there that need to own 1% Bitcoin. This would be a cool way of doing it.
Although they may look terrible, these type of crashes in markets are not something new. We've seen it happening a couple of times in history, both in bonds and in stocks. Those events put a lot of pressure on the fiat system and triggered an entire new monetary system. Crypto is still an infant compared to those markets, yet it's already putting a lot of pressure not only on regulators, but also in the fiat world. How does Greg view crypto regulation, and what is the likelihood of us seeing a new monetary system emerge with CBDCs?
I think regulation and clarity on regulation would be a huge positive for the digital asset space, and Bitcoin for me in particular.
Sure.
A lot of big money players need to have exposure to Bitcoin. As regulatory clarity emerges, I think you'll see more large investment managers have the desire to allocate to the Bitcoin asset class. Why? Well, because there are arguments that it is a diversifier. It's so the correlations are different to other assets. But from my perspective, having spent my whole life in bonds and the fiat markets, I view Bitcoin as actually being insurance on the fiat markets. And you should want to own insurance on the fiat markets, much like you own fire insurance on your house. I don't want the fiat markets to break. I don't want my house to burn down. But I own insurance on both of them because I'm concerned with things like the debt spiral in the fiat system, and the Treasury, the US Treasury, is going to have interest expense obligations that are going to surpass military spending this year. It's to pay back their outstanding loan obligations. Well, if that is the case, you want to own hard money. And the hardest form of money is Bitcoin. But I'm not saying don't own gold, because I own gold as well. And I own silver, I own other hard assets. This is why I don't say you have to be 100% in Bitcoin. All I do know is you should take your allocation to Bitcoin, not from your gold allocation, before you take your allocation to Bitcoin from your fixed income allocation. So there's the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. And you mentioned low-hanging fruit regulatory. Yeah, when that clears up, you will have diversified asset managers that might say it's no longer 60-40, it's 60-20-20, and the 20% new is called alternative assets, of which a sleeve is 5% digital assets, because that's the only way you're going to keep up with the fiat debasement. And that's the mathematics I like to bring to the table, Paul. It's grade 11 math. Fiat's debase. It's 100% certain that fiat will debase. You need protection against that. The best protection, in my opinion, is Bitcoin. That being said, I don't have all my hard asset money in Bitcoin. I have it spread amongst other hard assets as well. Well, I think CBDCs are coming for other reasons than you just mentioned. It's not. So what is a CBDC? It's digital fiat with surveillance. Okay, it allows you to surveil the citizens, so that under the table transactions, green cash transactions have gone away, so that you can tax the real underground economy. But with that surveillance comes some other things like, oh, Mr. Foss, I see you were at a rally in support of a political opposition party that we don't support. So therefore, we're going to penalize you and restrict your digital asset, or your CBDC, digital currency. It's just digital fiat, okay? They're going to print as much digital fiat as they print, call it analog, even though it's not analog money. Think of the money printer not printing physical bills. But all of this is said, Paul, I come back to 5 years is a pretty short time. I try to look out decades, and I think there'll be a process where it's possible that you have Bitcoin that exists side by side with a global currency called the US dollar, that they actually support one another. Think of Bitcoin as being your savings account, and think of digital currencies, whether it's central bank digital currency or still the fiat that is essentially digital as well. That's your checking account. Fiat is really good for global trade. I mean, you don't want to have to use barter for global trade. It's good to use fiat. There will be, in my opinion, a parallel network that develops, because when you switch from a network, let's say you're internal and you go, I'm going to switch from Microsoft to Apple. You don't turn your old Microsoft system off on a Sunday and come in on a Monday and turn on your new Apple system and just trust and fingers crossed that everything's going to work. Right. It's a parallel network that you study. So I think that there'll be and I believe this to be the case, if the United States were to embrace Bitcoin, it could ensure the survival of the US dollar as global reserve currency, not global reserve asset, but global reserve currency. US Treasury bonds as global reserve asset, I think they're on their way out, okay?
Yeah.
You have countries that aren't friends of the United States, that aren't purchasing US Treasury bonds to the same degree they were. Russia comes to mind because all their assets were frozen, but you see the same from China, and Japan are doing it not because they're not a friend of the USA, but just because they can't support their own yen without selling US Treasuries. All of this means the US Treasury bond as global reserve asset is in danger. I think it will be supplanted by Bitcoin, but to have two of those still, Bitcoin as your checking, as your savings account, fiat US dollars as your global reserve currency or checking account. So savings in Bitcoin, checking account in US dollars. I think that's a successful recipe. And that doesn't happen overnight. That'll take a decade or more. I want Bitcoin to succeed for my children. I think you do as well. Own Bitcoin as insurance on the fiat system, because the fiat system has big problems and they're just getting worse. It's only mathematics.
In regards to the Bitcoin versus fiat discussion, there are other people that also believe there could be a coexistence in the space. In fact, in his latest interview on The Truth About Bitcoin, Michael Saylor expressed that same conviction. In case you haven't watched it, just click the link that's popping up on the top right side of your screen, it's well worth it. That being said, what are your thoughts on Greg's opinion on this? Are we going to experience yet another black swan event? Can Bitcoin and a US dollar digital currency coexist in this space? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. This is Let's Talk Crypto, and we'll see you in the next video.